So to tell you a little bit about me, first of all, so I'm actually an osteopath. I have a practice in Bletchington, and I've been an osteopath for about 20 years. And I'm not particularly a menopause expert, but because I see a lot of women, and I am 48, so having conversations with people regularly about what they're experiencing and what's coming up and what they can do with it. I am also a counsellor and have been a counsellor for 3 years. And I wrote a book last year called Body Sense, which I had some with me, and I thought I had one in the bag, but I've left them all in the car, so it doesn't matter. But some of that, it kind of connects to how we start to feel differently about ourselves and our identity as we start to come through this particular stage of life, right? So yeah, I thought I would just lay this out in the way that made most sense to me, which is to talk first of all about the hormones, and then to look at some of the deficiencies that happen, or the imbalances that happen, what's happening in perimenopause and what's happening in menopause, and the other aspects that can help with that, you know, in terms of the dietary stuff, the supplemental stuff, exercise, why those different things are important, and then some of the books and resources that I often recommend, both social media stuff and printed books. Okay, all good, great. So yeah, what the hell is happening in there? Progesterone. There's progesterone and estrogen and testosterone. Those are our three main hormones, right? And progesterone is actually it's a precursor to cortisol. So it's one of the really important aspects of progesterone, is that the more you have, the less likely your body is going to start producing cortisol. If cortisol is being produced in preference, then you're going to have less progesterone. And obviously we don't really want cortisol because it's very pro-inflammatory in the system, can cause a lot of so it's your stress related type illnesses, so you become more predisposed to heart disease, to diabetes, this kind of cascade of chemicals and hormones that comes from the stress response, and cortisol is our stress hormone. So so then we've got estrogen, and there's 3 different types of estrogen, okay? And the main one, so there's estradiol, which is our that's the menopause one. That's the one that's active more in menopause. And estrone is more active in menopause, and that gives you more heart and brain protection. And estradiol is more active kind of pre-menopause and pre-perimenopause, right? And that's the womanly hormone, right? That's what gives us all of our curves and the juiciness and all the good stuff, right? That's where that's coming from. And estrogen is a fantastic hormone. It really revs you up, and you've got energy and excitement, and that's where the fun is, right? So although we kind of think, hormone fluctuations and the rest of it, actually it's a good hormone, right? And the third one, kind of E3 if you like, or I call O3, estriol, that plays a role in determining which cells turn on and off to estrogen, okay, in the body. And when we started to go through perimenopause, and we get this massive fluctuations through the cycle, each cycle you have, you go through the phases, and we call that the 4 seasons of the cycle, right? And that will shift a lot as we go through perimenopause, and we might have absence of bleeds. They won't come when we expect them to. We might have spotting. So lots of different things happening, and then we're just out of balance with the 2 hormones, and out of what we've come to know and expect in our body, right? So that's part of the picture there. And testosterone, again, fantastic in women, right? This is partly contributes to your bone density, contributes to libido, contributes to muscle tone and even cardiovascular health. And this is also when you get low testosterone, this is also when you get low mood, low tone, and dryness. Okay, so in terms of the seasons that I was talking about, have you all heard of that phrase before? The seasons of your cycle? No. Okay, cool. I love this concept, right? So that every month we go through all 4 seasons, and summer to autumn is ovulation point, right? And then winter is your bleed, spring is renewal. So after your period, you're going into spring, and then you go into summer, and then you have ovulation, you go into autumn, and then you're into bleed, and that's winter, right? And we think, a lot of people think of menopause as the second spring, and perimenopause as a kind of autumn winter phase, like as a really prolonged phase of autumn winter, right? There's the falling away, and there's the turning in, and when we are doing that, it's an aspect of remaking. What do we need to remake ourselves? And this is part of calling the menopause the second spring. And I think it is a very hopeful, joyous, determined time, right? And you think of, when we think of, the agency that a shrub has to have or a flower to push through the ground in springtime, there's almost an anger to it. There's a huge agency in it, right? And that in many ways is what menopause is, I think. So when we get out of balance, we can be either estrogen dominant or low estrogen, okay? And sometimes the estrogen dominance might be happening because our progesterone has fallen away really quickly, and we're in that kind of phase, and there's just a significant imbalance. So maybe not that we've suddenly got more estrogen, but relative to progesterone we have a lot less of. Yeah. Okay, and estrogen dominance, we will get things like allergies and asthma, more, brain fog, migraines, big part, changed sleep, tender or fibrotic breasts, irregular or heavy bleeding, polycystic ovaries, that's PCOS, again, more breast tenderness, fatigue and reduced stamina, mood swings and PMS, low magnesium, and thyroid dysfunction and weight gain. Okay, so those are the things that can go with when you have more estrogen than progesterone present generally in the bloodstream over time. And then low estrogen is when you're going to get the hot flushes. So we're not all going to get hot flushes, and we're not all going to get them all the way through the perimenopause cycle. So it can change through the cycle. So hot flushes, night sweats, vaginal dryness, depression and mood swings, dizziness, headaches, brain fog and just can't think, UTIs and incontinence, and increased susceptibility to vaginal infections. So this is partly, I think, about the moisture and the tone generally, so the smooth muscle tissue as well as your skeletal muscle tissue. Yeah, so your smooth muscle is more, think of it more internally present generally around your organs. And I put a note specifically about hot flushes because they can be really overwhelming. Has anybody had them yet? Yeah. And did you find them overwhelming? Yeah.
You're sweating, your pores are all sweating.
Yeah, absolutely.
The intensity of it, isn't it?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. So when estrogen is not reaching your brain, your endorphin levels decline, and that makes the brain panic and send out adrenaline. And adrenaline is the presence of the adrenaline that causes the hot flush, because suddenly there's this massive vasodilation, and it's very sudden, and it's body wide, and it's just like it is an event, right? And so just like poof. And a lot of people find it really scary, you know, they're like, oh my God, call an ambulance. I'm having a heart attack. And then it passes. But it can be that intense. Yeah. Yep. Okay, so the other thing is that we need estrogen in particular for bones and muscles. And the amount of estrogen present in a bloodstream through perimenopause into menopause can drop as much as 8 times lower than our original set level. Estrogen is produced in the liver, stored in fat, and then when that changes and our estrogen production reduces, then that can obviously have a massive effect, right? And it's not going to be that much necessarily in everyone, but it generally is 5 to 8 times lower. And this is part of the reason why we have more susceptibility to osteoporosis, particularly into, you know, the last 3 decades of life. But also estrogen and testosterone contribute to our muscle health and muscle tone and function, and so we become weaker as well. And it's the same for men, you know, their testosterone drops off. I've just there's a word for it, and it's not SAR, and I've completely forgotten it. Anyway, it's not important.
Great book.
Right, exactly. And I think the other thing that's really, really important about maintaining, you know, a sense of connection to our body and a sense of strength is flow. So we don't want to just be busy and doing maybe strength work or things like that. It's not just about bone health and muscle conditioning, but it is very much about flow as well. And I think the more that we start to introduce that, if you think of the autumn phase and the drawing in, then, you know, one of the reasons why yoga is so fantastic at this point is because it really allows us to move through the different parts, right? And to connect with ourselves in different ways. So flow is really important. Okay, so with the central nervous system, you might need to connect to your gut and your belly before you connect to your brain, okay? And brain health and heart conditioning and cardiovascular health are all part of the effect of changing estrogen hormone levels in the body. Because besides our bones and besides our mood, it's always the 2 main things that we focus on, but estrogen has a really big protective effect as well on our brain and our heart, right? And being able to maintain different types of movement, being able to maintain as much central nervous system health as possible in different ways is really advantageous. So part of that is thinking about our gut, and you know, if you're using anything like kefir or kombucha, make sure that you get lots of fiber in your diet, because that's prebiotic, and you want to make sure that the good bacteria in your tummy is staying the same, so it's staying really efficient and high. So kefir, I really rate kefir for that. Do you guys all know about? Yeah, okay, cool. Fantastic. I was about to say something else about that. Come back to me probably. Okay, so the other thing that you can do is challenge your brain, okay? And part of that is different types of movement. So really getting movement variability, including backwards movement. And if you are doing exercise where you like doing lunges or something like that, do reverse lunges as well. You know, every now and then, just like take a different route than you would around the kitchen, or, you know, go round right round the car to get into the side that you normally get in. Just stop making things a little bit more unpredictable, where your scope of tolerance to what's unpredictable and navigating pathways and relaying the pathways in your brain and keeping it active is just challenged a little bit. Yeah. And meditation in nature is fantastic for that as well. So really getting that aspect of soothing, of reconnecting, of replenishing, and getting away, taking time. I think time and space is so underspoken and undervalued in the world that we're in now. And there is no more important than time than in autumn and winter to be able to take time like that. And wrap up really well, enjoy the change of the seasons. You know, was anybody else into hygge? When, remember about 5 years ago, there was the Danish concept hygge.
Yes.
Lighting
the candles.
Yes, exactly. And that was one of the things they really worked with, was the rhythm of nature and the seasons. And, you know, like going out in and wrapped in a blanket. And
he's got a podcast at the moment.
Who's that?
The chap who wrote.
I had a book by a woman.
The chap who's just brought another book out.
Oh, okay. I'll have to check it out.
I
love it, honestly.
How to light the right candles and fire and...
Cool.
Yeah.
So I think it you know, nourishing, if you really think about those aspects of nourishing ourselves and maintaining our resources in the season of less being available to us from the outside. Okay, and does anybody meditate?
No,
A bit?
I should do one.
I do mindfulness.
Yeah. That's fine. Yeah, that's good enough. That is totally good enough. Yeah, meditation is great. I love the description of meditation. It's what happens. So if you use a mantra, you fall into the gap after the mantra and before the thought comes in, the next thought comes in. And we just let the next thought, it doesn't matter that thoughts are coming in, they're coming all the time, right? But we just kind of let them wash over us and not grab them, not judge them, not engage, don't start the conversation kind of thing. And that meditative quality is what happens in the gap. And I really like that description, because, you know, there's nothing you have to do or not do with that. It's just kind of reflecting on that moment. So in terms of mind and mood, and this is one of the reasons that I wanted to bring the book. So just noticing your feelings, because you'll have lots of different feelings coming up, right? And I think that I think that we are definitely challenged at this point in life, you know, like there's no doubt that, you know, the roles that we've had and putting other people first, there's so much of that as being a woman, and especially if we have kids, or we have a partner, or we have a business, or we have all the above, and dogs, and, you know, there's always stuff, right? And we're rushing and we're trying to get to the next thing, and what becomes really hard in that is noticing what's in ourselves. And there's a word called interoception, and that is everything that's happening on the inside. It's all the internal milieu, and it is partly your sensations and your emotions, but it's also what's happening through your neuroendocrine system and your neurovascular system and your immune system, and how everything communicates together, because nothing's working on its own, right? And we are always updating, and I think this is a particular time of updating. And it's a moment to go, okay, how can I give back a little bit more to myself? How can I prioritize myself? What's really my perception of my role in this moment, in this place? And, you know, is that the reality? Am I making this role for myself? And what could change a little bit so that I can be fed and nourished by my environment or things I choose to do as well? And, you know, if you're finding yourself being really angry or sad, those are all emotions are always completely fine. But I think especially at this time, it's really important to give yourself permission to feel all of them, and just let it be information. Right? It's just information. And, you know, start writing. Just whenever the emotion comes up and you have, you know, try and make a little bit of time to write some of it out and see what else comes up, see what's underneath that. See, you can use different tools to make metaphor of it. What texture does it have? What color does it have? If it was an animal, what would it be? And what does that tell you? And is there anything different that you'd like that to be saying about where you are at this moment and how your life looks? Because this is a moment to start making maybe different choices for yourself. And writing letters too, because we don't always have to send them, right? Letters are brilliant to write. It's what, is it? I read a lot of Brené Brown, love Brené Brown stuff, and she calls it the SFD, the shitty first draft, right? When you write something down, just like on the page, right? You get it all out. You have a total tantrum like a spoiled spider on the page, and then you can burn it. It doesn't have to go anywhere. It's just the fact that you have taken it from part of you. You've brought it up from wherever it was. You've noticed it. You've noticed what's underneath it. You've moved from the amygdala, which is the kind of fear survival center of your brain. You've moved it to the prefrontal cortex of your brain, which is your capacity part, basically. And it's your structure. You can conceptualize what's through the prefrontal cortex, and you don't have to bury or react. In the book, I talk about 6 P's. So it's a model I developed, which is perception. What's our perception of what's going on around us, and what's our perception of our role? Because our brain does not recognize reality. Our brain only recognizes our perception of reality. And our roles are our personal roles, they're our professional roles, maybe our organizational roles. So what you do for your work and the place that you work might be slightly different, including if you work for yourself. And then there's our community roles as well. And how priority is the second P. How do we prioritize ourselves? How do we prioritize our needs? How do we name our needs and what's important for us? And then prediction. So this is the bit about as interoception that I was talking about, this internal milieu. And that informs what's called allostasis, which is our prediction system. So if we think that the body systems we need to maintain like metabolic regulation, it happens through 2 systems, right? One is homeostasis, which tries to bring us back into stability. But then we also have allostasis, which tries to get ahead of the curve and predict what we're going to need. And that's on a biological level as well as a psychological level. And that's based on our predictions of reality as well and what's happened in the past. And then we have protection. And protection is part of being in a safe, contained environment. Who are your trusted people? Who do you know will be there for you through the wins and the struggles and the losses, without judgment, without blame, shame, any of those things? And sometimes it's a therapist, sometimes it's a personal trainer, and can you really trust your personal trainer, if you have one, to be the safe container? We don't always have to be on, we don't always have to get it right. And when we have an off day, or something's come up while we're doing a workout, which it can and often does, because our body is a vessel of communication, right? And it's partly where we store and we embody, and so stuff can come up when we're training, and are they going to be able to hold that space? And I think just being able to actually reflect on the quality of the people around us and who we're choosing in that kind of way can make a real difference to how we are held and how we feel protected. And then how do we protect ourselves? How do we keep our boundaries, name our boundaries, know our boundaries? Sometimes that's really hard in itself, right? Permission to ask for our needs to be met, permission to feel, to think, to be important, maybe in ways that are different to the ways that people in our lives are used to us being important. We're not unimportant to them, but maybe we want to create another path, or, you know, step outside what everybody's grown to expect of us. And then finally, potency, because we're put on this earth to thrive and to fulfill our potential. We're not made to survive alone, right? And I think this is a point in life where, as women, we can step into our thriving. It is an opportunity. You got to go through some really sticky stuff before you get to that point sometimes. But I do think if we see it as an opportunity as well, then we don't get to the other side of it feeling degraded. And then nutrition and supplements. So magnesium is great for cardiovascular health and maintaining muscle, nerve, and bone development and function. In our diet, it's green leafy vegetables, legumes, nuts, seeds, fish, poultry, and we don't have to have a supplement, but if you want to take a supplement of magnesium, about 400 milligrams is generally enough. If there's any other bits going on, it's worth finding out on the difference of that. Vitamin D is a really important one. It's really hard to find in our diet. It's really hard to replicate in our diet, and it's important for bone health. It's a muscle maker. Okay, and there's only a lot of recent research around it being a muscle maker. So, like, fantastically important for that word that I can't remember beginning with SAR. And we want D3 in
I was listening to a podcast.
Oh,
She
good.
was talking about it yesterday.
Okay,
this
cool.
morning. She's on Dr. Chatterjee. Do you listen
Yeah,
to those?
yeah,
She was
sometimes.
talking about the muscle, yeah.
Oh, great.
But
There you go.
I can't remember.
Great. It's nice to hear it twice in one day, right? So I actually looked up one of the best supplements for this, and I've put the link on here for you to the clinical review of the vitamin D3 supplements, but they rate Better Bits for around 1,000 to 5,000 IU D3. GABA or taurine is an inhibitory neurotransmitter and can be supplemented in peri or postmenopause, particularly for anxiety and depression. It really helps that prefrontal cortex part of your brain to get active and be present and function well. Okay, and another supplement that can be really good for that is lion's mane mushroom. And there's been a lot of research on that recently, and I'm actually a partner with a company who does a lot of high grade, like sports level CBD and adaptogen mushrooms, and they've just developed a lion's mane on its own, and there's another one of theirs that I use, which is the mushroom complex, which is brilliant for Avernalvic, can you tell? Brilliant for that. So I've put on here as well my link, so I get 20% discount. So if you do want to explore them and you want to, then use my link and you get 20% discount off. Okay. And are any of you training hard, like endurance training? No. Okay. So that bit doesn't matter. That's the beta aniline. So there's a woman called Dr. Stacey Sims, and she has a lot of research. Her like most known quote is that women are not little men, and most research is done on men, using men as the cohort, and we are different. Our physiology is different. Our needs are different. And she's done a lot of research into what we need, including things like carbohydrate gels and things like that. We need different types of things to get us through to the end line and how we support ourselves. So beta aniline is one of the things that she looked up, that she talked about. And then I've just given a little list of the Instagram pages that I think do a really good job of highlighting new research, experiences, and then books. So Roar by Stacey Sims, and she has an app as well. Perimenopause Power by Maisie Hill, and if any of you've got teenage girls, Maisie Hill did a book before that called Period Power, fantastically informative. And so if you have any teenage girls or no teenage girls, I really recommend it to them. The Perimenopause Handbook is great information. It's just facts all the way through, but really easily presented, very readable. And a lot of what I picked up from here, I took mainly from there and then added extra bits from elsewhere. The Second Spring by Kate Codrington. She's quite local, actually, Kate Codrington. And another one that's just recently come out called Wise Power from the founders of Red School. Again, they're got a big presence on Instagram. So yeah, if you're ever looking to, there's yoga and Pilates things on there, a few menopause doctors, and then just menopause kind of charities, if you like, that are just this movement towards getting more information and resources for women. So yeah, I hope that wasn't too much of a whistle-stop tour. Like I say, these are the main things that tend to come up, and I think that just having a little bit more information and just knowing where to look, right, it just makes all the difference. But if you do have any questions, feel free to message me or email me. I've got my website on the bottom of the page, and if I don't know, I can find out for you. So yeah.
What's your view on HRT and how long you should stay on it? Do you have an opinion on that?
I think that it is fantastically beneficial for lots of women. Lots of women also don't want to take it for personal reasons and family history reasons. I think that the quality of HRT has improved a lot, probably particularly in the last decade. Why struggle and suffer? If there is, it's my personal view. If you don't have any contraindications to it, then yes, there are definitely things that you can do. And I'm a big advocate of using exercise. And one, I don't think I must have skimmed over it, but one of the aspects of exercise is if you do a longer training session, so 45 minutes to an hour of just a fairly low heart rate, sit in the saddle, time in the saddle stuff, or long walk once or twice a week, and then a burst, so high heart rate, so whether it's a HIIT class or whether it's a run, or you've got an exercise bike and you go hard for half an hour, whatever the case may be, that is a really good way to balance out the hormone levels, to stay on top of weight redistribution, mental health, cardiovascular health. That's all the things that we're aiming for, because it's not just the how do other people see us bit. It's really, the important bit is how are we ourselves in our body and in our experience day to day, and how are we going to be in 10 years and in 20 years. What can we do now, like in terms of our bone health, what we do in our teens and our 20s in terms of exercise affects our bone health in our 50s and 60s. And that doesn't mean like, oh, well, I wasn't interested in sports, so I'm screwed.
That's exactly what I was
yeah, it's not that at all. But it does kind of give you some information that maybe, okay, let's just start doing a few more longer sessions then, where you do longer low heart rate stuff, and the intention of that manifests then as I'm making a difference to my cardiovascular health, to my mental health, to my weight control, to feeling better in myself. And I can take confidence in what I'm doing matters, because it totally does. It makes a difference, even if nobody else sees it. It is making a change, and you're benefiting yourself 10 years down the line. So yeah, I kind of went off on a little side alley there. Did I answer fully enough? Yeah.
I went to the menopause clinic in Oxford a few years ago, and they said you have a proven shorter life expectancy if you don't go on it. And
Right.
they absolutely, and Louise Newsom should say the same, wouldn't she? She's like,
I believe so,
that
yeah.
she's
And that
staying
is
for
to
her
do,
whole life,
I really believe that is to do with
It's
the
better.
cardiovascular health.
and better than the osteoporosis kind of
Totally.
route.
Totally. Falls and fractures, right?
Yeah.
You know that if somebody over the age of 75 has a fall, their likelihood of survival is reduced after that. Their life expectancy is reduced after that point than it would have been before.
So they're now kind of suggesting, I believe, that you even stay on it way past menopause and just stay on the estrogen at least, and seems to be the way they're going.
I've seen that. I've definitely seen that.
But obviously no one's probably been doing it long enough to know if that's really right or wrong.
And what downsides might there be to that as well? Yeah. Yeah, I think as much as you can manage with the other things and boost your system with all of those other things, then the better for like overall, But at some point, you may very well need HRT, and if that can help you to be resourced in the short term and the long term, and you don't have contraindications, yeah, it's crazy not to. I know I take ibuprofen if I've got a migraine. Yeah. Any other questions?
When you mentioned here about the low estrogen or the estrogen dominance,
yeah.
How would you necessarily would that be down to a blood test or something
Pretty
to be able
much.
to determine?
Yeah.
That's quite interesting.
Yeah. I think that's quite interesting too.
Yeah.
Because I can identify with points
Both.
in both of those.
But then also you think, okay, well then what role does testosterone play?
Yeah.
And maybe that's the point where you're at the moment.
Yeah.
It might be your early phase. So I suspect, and I have this purely just my thinking, is that we fall into estrogen dominance first because our progesterone relatively drops away more quickly, and then potentially move into more of the low estrogen, where then you get more. So you get more of that kind of brain fog, migraine-y, body ache, first, bless you, and then potentially. But some people will just be more one or the other. And it does come down to, and it's one of the things as well, I think I encourage a lot of my patients just to have Thriver, the company Thriver, these companies where you can send away and have just like blood tests done, just to see your levels. At certain points of life, knowing what your normal basic is, so that over time you can compare, because we only know if we're high or low on something if we have something to compare it to, and we're all individual and we're all going to go through our own symptom journey. There's nothing set in any of this, right?
Yes, I did one of those about 18 months ago.
Oh, cool.
Because I started to have insomnia, and it's almost like post-COVID.
Yeah, exactly.
And I did one of those, and actually it was just to come back and say if you're in perimenopause or not, and it said I wasn't, but what it did show me was that for my age, I had high levels of all the hormones apart from estrogen, where I was low for my age.
Right, okay.
It was just really interesting to see that
the balance.
Actually,
yeah.
Although I wasn't in that stage, I was higher in other hormones than that one. So, and I think that's changed again.
Huh.
Can you still do that if you're on HRT though?
I don't see why not. It might not give you the truest reading of where you're at.
Yeah.
But you can certainly still get your blood levels, because estrogen is just the HRT is putting it into your system for you, and balancing what's in the blood and how it's being used through the body. So then it will still give you information.
I didn't know where I was at, but I was put on suggested HRT for anxiety.
Right.
So I got the gel, and instead of doing the progesterone 2 pills on the last 2 weeks, they suggested the progesterone every day.
Right.
So 1 pill every night.
Yeah.
So I'm on that. So I have no idea where I'm at or what I'm doing.
More at the end of menopause, when you go on daily progesterone, I think, to maintain, just to keep the lining thinner.
Everybody's
That's my
individual. That's
understanding.
what's
The daily, but I think the daily is normally recommended later on, because I've talked about how do you know when you go from having it for 2 weeks and then going on to daily, and my doctor said at that point your lining it's not thin enough to suggest you're at the end of your menopause yet. I think that's normally recommended when they think you've almost finished your menopause, because I didn't know if periods would stop if you're on HRT, because obviously you're taking estrogen, but I think they still do naturally stop anyway, even if you are taking HRT.
They stop in HRT,
Do they?
I think
See, I've never had fluctuate. I've always been exact and never had heavy.
Now?
Yeah, never had heavy light. I've
sure.
just always been.
I'm just not sure that having daily. I could be wrong, but my understanding, I thought that they would normally move you from the 2 weekly to daily towards end of menopause when you're not really.
What was the reason they changed it for you?
Well, to be honest, my doctor was very anti-HRT and said it's very, very bad for you, and we try and keep you on it as short a time as possible. And I was having quite a hard time, and then the nurse who works in the practice phoned back and said, actually, I think it's a good idea, and he's a little bit old-fashioned on his views. She had patches for 6 months and then moved me onto gel when it was available, but had just read up and thought it was a good idea, rather than doing the 2 weeks at the end, just to have a daily, which is slightly worrying now you've said that, because I've never entered menopause, let alone ended it.
There is a menopause clinic in Oxford, and it is a free resource, but you do need to be referred by your GP. But I think any woman in this country is entitled to a bone density scan to know what your estrogen, because obviously when you don't have estrogen, right, your bone density drops.
They very reluctantly do bone density scans. They very rarely do them, but they should. Yeah, totally.
So when I had mine, like my bone density was on the verge of osteoporosis, so they put me straight onto HRT. But everyone is apparently entitled to do that. I think if you asked your doctor, they ought to. Obviously, any referral, is this correct? That any GP surgery, any referral they do cost the GP surgery money.
Probably,
so any blood test they do cost them money, whether it's there or even if they refer you. So if they refer you to the menopause clinic in Oxford, it probably still costs your GP.
I think it does, yeah.
Something.
Yeah.
But my friend works at the JR, and she did say it's still quite an underused service, but it's just getting yourself there.
Yeah, absolutely. And most people, it doesn't occur to them. There's no.
They're quite good. They are very good there,
especially in the early stages of menopause and perimenopause. But yeah,
there's probably.
I would definitely maybe seek out another, especially because your only symptom was anxiety. Like half the country was anxious. Like
anxiety and waking up bang on 4 o'clock in the morning.
It's nice, isn't it?
But so I was 51 a couple of weeks ago, so I've been on it a year. But
I just think you probably need to see something.
I think it's great that you're asking questions.
I
keep asking the same questions.
Could you see someone different at your practice?
I can't even get an appointment at the practice at the moment. It's just phoning up on the day. So
where are you based?
Are you around here? Bicester.
Because my doctor, they're brilliant. Brackley, Springfield. But
the other ones, they are so good.
Yeah. Don't really know how else.
To be honest, I'm kind of not worried. But it was just interesting when you said towards the end, because I didn't even think I had. I think I might have just been touching on peri, let alone the other end. So maybe it's something sort of to go back to the nurse and just write an e-consult. That's what their favourite thing is. See what they say.
Do it. Just reference the fact that you've been to this day and discussions were had, and you'd just like to query the levels. And
I would ask for a referral there if you wanted one. Are you on Instagram? Sometimes you can get an answer on.
Instagram's harder and harder, I think,
because more and more people are following. People like Louise Newsom's now very well known. But before, I think you could probably ask a question and get an answer on a feed. It's probably more difficult now. Shazia Harper, or I don't know, you've got her on there as well.
Yeah.
In a way, you might be better just asking for a referral to the menopause clinic. Just finding out, because you just, like you said, you do it and you just do what they tell you because you don't really know.
Is it a bad thing to be on it daily? Is it a bad thing to be on it daily?
I don't think any of us in the room are qualified to give you a yes or no to that. I think you need to.
You said something.
I just asked when you move over to daily, because I was like, how do you know when you? Because if you're, I sort of thought that being on HRT was more like being on the pill, where it's then a synthetic bleed. But I don't think it totally is. Really, it's just topping up your estrogen levels. Because I don't know now really what. It's definitely changing, but I don't really know what my cycle is really. Seems to have gone for about 3 weeks, but not very much, and then before it was horrific. So it's just, but that's obviously happening I suppose I did have a change in my dose of HRT.
A lot of the
It's-
conversation
I
as
think
well
you do need to
about
speak to somebody that-
progesterone is that to really match it to what your body needs, that you can
Both.
get biodynamic. Yeah, so
bioidentical.
that it really matches your body and what your body needs, and you know
It
that's
takes
generally one
time,
of the
doesn't
best.
it?
So they
Yeah,
should only
one of the
be-
best
get the
ways.
levels right.
But they should only be prescribing bioidentical ones, right?
It should be,
You
yeah.
shouldn't really, because there's no reason not to be getting
What is bio?
the most similar to the progesterone that's produced in the natural progesterone in your body. So there used to be much more synthetic versions, I think, of progesterone, but actually it's
Yeah,
Estrogen,
exactly.
which is probably what you're on. Estrogen.
I don't know. It's a little round white
White
pill.
one, yeah.
Yes, which is really hard to swallow when you don't have water.
Yeah.
And I always forget it and
Dry,
just
isn't
pop
it?
one at the
Yeah. And so that's the bioidentical. I think that's the best one that would be mainly prescribed.
Is that from? Is it pigs? It comes from.
Pigs.
Yeah.
Does it?
I thought they were plant-based.
It comes from pigs.
No,
Yeah.
you're
The
right.
natural
It is,
estrogen that comes from pigs.
But it's the most similar to the
Yeah, it's the
progesterone,
most-
that progesterone
absolutely
that we
the
produce
most-
in our body.
yeah.
So.
It is. It's the most.
I should read more, shouldn't
They don't
Do you
tell you
feel any
those
do
things,
you
do
feel,
they?
do you feel any better or any different though?
No.
We don't.
Well, my sleep patterns and so on. It's interesting because Helen has